Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
We're continuing a little bit on the discussions around parts of the Constitution. But before we talk about it, you probably need to read. Can you read that whole book?
It might take me a while, but yeah.
Left to right, top to bottom, you're good to
But
go.
you see Article 14,
I do see Article 14,
and your question was about Section 3.
Section 3.
Okay, do you have it?
Yep, I got it right here.
Okay, how about reading it and then we all hear it?
Okay, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, under any state, who having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may vote by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability.
All right.
Whoa.
Whoa.
So it's up to the Congress, so what they decide about that, apparently.
Yeah, that definitely could be an option, right?
Yeah, it could be an option.
So that is playing out in our world right now.
Yeah, that's why you picked 3, I presume.
That is. That's it's
Okay, but it says that they're, well, let's hear what everybody else has to say here.
Well, it said anybody that partakes in or
shall have
comforts.
engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, the
Yeah.
government,
The government.
or given aid or comfort to anybody.
or
So-
given aid or comfort to.
So it has to go to a 2/3 vote?
If they want to remove such disability.
Explain
Yes.
that to me. Remove such disability.
Which means not insurrection or whatever, then they could go ahead. I think that's what it means.
So,
I would say so too.
so
Yeah.
will there need to be a vote to allow,
Well, that's, after that is when they talk about how the voting can go federally and statewide, I think. But the Article 3 itself, insurrection is a pretty serious charge. I think it holds a death penalty, but I'm not sure about that. So the first thing they have to do, and what we're looking at now, and I'm not a lawyer, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah.
the insurrection would have to be proved.
See, and that is my argument. Very thing is my argument about Section 3, is that the authors did not give or did not specify that it has to be litigated or proven
Yes,
that the individual in question.
it's just like you threw
Is
a
an
word in
insurrectionist.
there. Yeah.
Right. They gave no mechanism to determine or even any need
Yeah.
to prove through a court of law that this person being accused.
That's
It
right.
is simply an accusation,
Yeah, that's it.
basically.
That's it. But
I'm feeling very strange about this.
Well, think about this. The reason this is in here is because after the Civil War, they did not want members of the South government. Once the South was defeated, they did not want to give those individuals the opportunity to be in the Senate or the Congress of the North of the United States.
Oh, okay.
So anybody who engaged, and they called the Civil War
Yeah.
an insurrection.
They called the Civil War an insurrection?
That is, yeah.
well,
I need
Yeah.
to be doing a little more research, Pat.
Yeah, so I guess like what I keep going back to is what is the actual definition of an insurrection?
well, that's where my guess is that's where you begin to gather troops to actually advocate for the overthrow of the government, rather than a political party. It wouldn't be a political party because they do that all the time, you know.
Well-
we won't do this when I'm president. We're not going to do this what old Harry whatever did. See, we're going to make it different. So that's not insurrection. That's being politic. But what they're blaming Mr. Trump about is
You said it. You said the T word.
I did. Well, who else would know what the hell we're talking about here? Oh, maybe Jackson. But anyway, they're going to have to, and that's what his lawyers are saying, I think, is that you can't prove any of that stuff, you know? And if you can't prove it, then you're good to go for
This doesn't say you have to
It
prove
does
it.
not, and that has been my concern from the very beginning. It doesn't give you a mechanism. It doesn't say, and you must prove through a court of law.
It just says 2/3 vote.
Yeah, but you have to also remember that at the time that this document was written, there was no Supreme Court, there was no judicial system. They were in the process of creating it. None of that existed when they were writing this, right?
Well, the amendment was the 14th Amendment that came out, so they wouldn't even have mentioned it, I don't think, because 14th Amendment was sometime in 1800s.
You're right,
Not when,
1868.
Yeah,
I think
1868.
it was
wasn't it?
8, I think
Yeah.
so.
And my, just to have a reason to say it, is that was not my Washington history book, it was a civil history book. And it had, in the back of the book was the Constitution. But before each one of those, they said, so Negroes could. It's what they wrote in there, but not in the Constitution, as I understand it. And what they were trying to make plain is the reason that was made in the first place, 14, was so that the black population, called Negro at the time, black population could function as citizens. And
Rather than the 3/5 a citizen that they were
Yeah,
considered
yeah.
prior to this.
yeah,
Article.
no more of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But still, it relates, the Constitution relates only up to, which is it, the 19th Amendment, the 22nd Amendment? Females. Females were not allowed to vote.
Big
Not-
mistake.
Not until what, like the 1920s?
1920.
We had
Females
more,
could not vote.
We had more vote than you guys knew.
And, well, no, you have to listen to my ancient women tape sometime there, because they know how to handle the males, even though they couldn't vote, you know. They say, you go to war, guess what you don't get? And it works.
One of
It worked on a-
One of the arguments that's being made is getting right down to the brass tacks of the words here.
Yeah.
Right? You know, in 2017, when Trump put his hand on the Bible and said, the Chief Justice says, repeat after me, I, will preserve and protect the Constitution. Blah, blah. He said those words, quote
Yeah.
unquote. This says who an individual who has previously taken an oath as a member of Congress to support the Constitution. And his lawyers are arguing that in that pledge with his hand on the Bible, he never said the word support.
Oh, good God.
He said protect and whatever else I said. Serve and protect the Constitution.
Yeah.
He said, I never said the word support.
Is this real life? This isn't real.
This is really, it's, the Supreme Court is going to hear this Thursday, this week.
Is that right?
Yes.
Are they going to be on TV?
Well,
I would have
Supreme,
Oh,
there's no
that's
cameras
somewhere.
allowed in there.
That's
Oh.
right.
probably for the best.
Are they just hearing it, or is this?
Colorado has challenged him and eliminated him from the ballot. And that has worked its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. So now they're hearing Donald J. Trump versus the state of Colorado. Thursday, this week.
How about-
And they're gonna determine whether or not they're gonna have to interpret this in such a way.
Well, let me ask you,
We're being very
you know,
quiet.
after January
deep end.
6th, after January 6th, people got all upset about, you know, insurrection, and all that sort of stuff. But, what was I gonna say? Damn it, I lost it again.
I guess the question is, do you believe remember the day
Yeah,
we went in and watched
It was
what's
lunch.
happening?
It was lunch. We came in and I said, "What the hell's going on TV?" We couldn't believe it.
yeah.
Yeah. And then they started storming the state capitol.
Yeah.
Yeah, that same day.
And then
In the
freaking
afternoon.
fires everywhere and shit was weird.
And maybe Shelby's
Yes.
right when he says, you know, I haven't looked it up in the dictionary. What is an insurrection?
Yeah,
But
that's
it's
my thing. Is
an
I
attempt
don't
to
know what that-
overthrow the government or
Okay.
overthrow the procedures,
Right.
which, you know, certifying an election for a new president to hand over power to another individual, that would be a procedural
Yeah.
event that the United States as a country was doing at that time.
Yeah.
And for him to say, you know, we have to fight.
Yeah, is he
He
not
told
in?
those people, we heard it on tape.
Yeah,
We have to fight.
well, but fight is rough.
There's
I knew this was gonna stir up
There's
a
a
horse.
case there. I mean, there's definitely a case
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, as a person that is just a normal person, whatever. I'm pretty normal sometimes. I'm not so normal. I was scared that day. I was actually scared that day. The same scare that I was on, I remember 9/11. A real fear of that safety that we all have, to be honest with you, bought into. Because are we really safe, you know? And the answer is no, through my vision. But I have been that person that bought into that, and I've bought into the pomp and circumstance of the White House, of our state capitol. I bought into that, and those are things that you don't attack. I think that attacking with your words is one thing. Our country was under attack that day.
well, that's an opinion.
How can that be an opinion when I watched it on the news?
Well, there was no army involved. There was no military at all involved in any of it. Even the campus safekeepers, who they call
Capitol Police.
Yeah, even the Capitol Police were not terribly involved, but they weren't involved at all. They thought I don't know, but there was no military takeover. If it's just a verbal takeover, and then we're talking about voting.
Right, but there were people hurt.
Insurrection, an act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government.
Say it again.
An act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government. So by definition,
It
that
wasn't
was an insurrection.
That's how I view it too. I mean, that's what
There's
I
no
saw.
mention of military in that definition. This is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary.
He's dead now. Isn't
Is he? Is that one guy or is that two?
Merriam-
Yeah,
yeah.
Merriam-Webster. Yeah,
he?
sure.
Which is a good movie if you ever want to watch that on the
Insurrection? No, I
No,
saw
the
it
guy
on the
that
news
built
a couple 4 years ago.
No, it freaked me out. It
Yeah.
freaked me out, and what freaks me out almost even more is that here we are. How many years later? 4, and it's still not handled.
I mean, that's a very interesting amendment because by the definition of that amendment,
He
like,
should be in jail.
Yeah, like that raises issue. That raises issue. Now the intent of the law being something that stemmed from the Civil War makes it almost like, okay, can you really adhere this to this person? But if it truly was an attack on the establishment, I feel like there's justification in that.
Is
I
our
would agree with that,
Constitution like a Bible in that it's
They
up?
treat it that way.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
is it up for a person's take on it, or is it
We're
the
talking,
way it
we're
is?
talking about the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. So yes, right? I mean, they had to amend it 14 times plus
Yeah.
in order to get it the way that they wanted it, right?
18 times is the max right now.
Yeah.
You bring up a really good point, though. Is it open for interpretation?
Interpretation. Thank you.
Or am I to read this as a
Yes.
as a justice, as an originalist?
If you're a justice, it's open for your interpretation. If you're not a justice, it is not open for your interpretation. If it finally comes before you, then that's not your, well, be your interpretation, but they have to put it against
Their interpretation of it.
their interpretation of the Supreme Court, of what they're, of the law, the maximum constitutional law. So they have to do that. And even though the media might say, well, gee, yeah, everybody saw it, everybody knows, everybody doesn't fit that in their interpretation. And that's what's going to happen, isn't it? So he may have a suit against Colorado.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what we got with
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Amendment
Very,
18.
very
yeah.
fascinating.
Fascinating. I mean, it's
Very much
we're going to
so.
find out in a couple of days.
What other states is he not able to vote in right now, or be
You
on
want
the
to
ballot?
you want to see an insurrection.
Maine.
Wait until they pull him off the. Like, if they were to pull him off on this, like, I think you saw some stuff before.
Yeah.
Like, you would see some stuff now. If
That's
they said,
not the
hey,
only
he can't
state.
be on the ticket.
That's not the only state. There's a few other states.
Maine is the only other one. A
Zach?
couple of them have tried, our state included.
Yeah, I was gonna
But-
say our state included.
So they're all chasing the same argument.
Yeah,
In the
but
different
some of the
states.
state legislatures or the state Supreme Courts have said, no, we want to allow him.
So
About
what is
like our state.
So what is Colorado historically blue? I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Maine blue. I'm guessing.
But see, are
not
people
sure
gonna
about
I
lay
guess what
that
I'm getting
on
at
that?
is like these states, even if he's not on the ticket, if they're going to sway Democratic anyway, then it doesn't hold water. Like if this was in Texas or in some state that would actually be a linchpin to like switching the electoral votes in one favor, then it would hold water, you would think.
It's a good point, right?
Yeah, they're not
Unless they
doing
run
it
it
because
all
they're
the
a
way
red
up.
state.
Well,
They're
yeah,
doing it because it's right. Is what they believe as a state is right.
yeah.
If it
I
was
guess
a
my point is-
Republican-controlled state, then they would be doing it right. If it's a Democratic state, they're doing it because they don't like Trump.
See, and I
Is
don't
that
think
what you're
that.
insinuating?
What I'm insinuating is like if it passes in Colorado and they say he can't run for president, is that carry on a federal level or does that carry on a state level? Because
That's
now,
right.
if you're running the election on a federal level, and they throw out a couple of states that are going to be blue anyway, we're still in the same scenario. This man could still be elected, even though he was thrown out in the state of Colorado, Maine, and whatever the other
Right.
ones are.
This
Right?
man could
They
be
would've
elected
voted.
in jail.
I mean, I think you're making a little bit of a leap there. I mean, he's not in jail yet.
And a lot of legal people, I think, what I've heard is that they don't believe that part of the Constitution applies in this case.
The rich
So
don't
they'll-
believe the Constitution
They'll
applies to
go
them.
ahead and vote, the way they think they ought to vote. And if those states don't choose to vote on that, well, it leaves everybody else to decide what the government is.
I would agree. And intent of the law versus letter of the law. And I go back, that's always the saying that I go back to. And I think here the intent of the law was put into place in the Civil War.
Yeah.
So are they going to uphold that today?
Is that circle that you were talking about? that's kept me up a little bit at night. I gotta be honest
What,
with
the
you.
circle?
When I made-
Yeah.
Circle, the
Did you
circle
bring
of
your
trust.
Did you bring your notes out today?
Do you remember?
Couldn't see him anyway.
You
Oh,
went
shucks.
from capitalism to socialism,
Yep.
capitalism, socialism,
There was a bunch of isms. There was like
something,
6 isms.
and then dictatorship.
Well,
Authoritarianism.
you had to go. You know, some of the Eastern countries, it's like they call it a democracy, but nobody gets to vote for them. You know, they all vote one way, and so that's that's kind of a false democracy according to us, according to how we think. So,
But what is that circle?
well, there's all right. Let's see. Maybe it's on here.
No, there's capitalism.
The capitalism that we have, yeah. And then, as you see, for a lot of the young people going for socialism,
Mhm.
and that seems to be popping up in this voting time. And then, what was this? Capitalism and socialism, but socialism comes on a little more slowly, like you get a little more federal.
Freaks me out.
Saying
Would communism
how
be
you're
next?
supposed to do things.
Oh yeah, maybe that's what he says.
And then eventually it'd be autocratism, and then on into a dictator, even though
These are cycles that have happened.
And then on to
dictator.
authoritarianism.
And then you can take dictator and switch that over to say, well, we're back to the feudalism again.
And we're back to
where
the
you
oh
have
fuck those imism.
the prince of the palace.
Feudalism, yeah.
doing all that thing.
It's the end of the cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, and then,
Yeah. We're off the mic.
then that either gets a war or gets enough people to vote or raise enough heck about it to get it back to the democratic thing. But the socialism was really talked against by that
Argentine president.
Argentine president. He says the West is they're giving up, they're headed toward socialism, but it's going to destroy their freedom. Now that's a magic word. Freedom is a magic word, and if it's not connected to how we're voting, what do you want for freedom? You know. So they have a partial socialism. We have Social Security, and we have help for old people like me, and
Medicare, Medicaid.
Medicaid, which is a real positive thing for the old folks.
Mhm.
But the old folks aren't considered to be people who go grab their rifle and put on a hat.
If you have to have paid into Medicare in order to
Yeah.
receive Medicare.
Yeah,
You can't just have been unemployed your whole life and receive Medicare.
yeah, you can do that. You can even come across the border and get Medicare.
You sure?
No.
I didn't think so.
But it seems logical, doesn't it?
No, I mean they could come across the border or whatever and get assistance,
Yeah.
which would be welfare,
Well, yeah.
but not Medicare. Medicare is something that you've paid into your whole life.
Yeah.
And now you're not receiving any of those benefits. You're actually having your benefits paid by somebody else. This is your son, Tim. Tim, we're currently recording a podcast that you're now going to be on.
Okay.
So we're talking about the Constitution with Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 14th Amendment.
14. I don't know if Texas has a 14th Amendment.
He says he doesn't know if Texas has a 14th Amendment.
They probably were kind of slow in getting it that to function, but I think it is a federal proposition.
Yeah, it is. Kids don't recognize.
That is awesome.
Well, anyway, Tim, let me call you in a little bit.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, bye.
There's also, I listened to a discussion, not a discussion, he was talking about his belief in how our law got put in place. And that started with the Old Testament. Says you want to read about most of how the law began. It's just pick up Genesis and read Genesis, and it's a fascinating thing to listen to. That was at that time. It's there was no democracy or anything like that. There was there was the prophet, there was a big guy, but they also learned to argue. He says that the Jewish people that were there at the time of
That time.
yeah, that they learned to argue. And you may not believe this, but the book I'm reading, which was a new translation, you guys have heard that before, has arguments going on with the good Lord, and they didn't win all the time. Sometimes, a lot of the time, the good Lord won, but the antagonist didn't. That is to say that if you didn't agree with how the good Lord punished a bunch of people, you could argue about it, and that occurred, down through history. Just think about it. And something that I don't want to throw sticks in the thing, but
No, are you sure you don't want to throw sticks into the thing? You're kind of a stick throwing son of a gun.
I kind of
Been called worse.
Yeah.
That's for
Been
sure.
called worse.
Yeah, been called worse.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? It was like there have been several times. For instance, I'm just going to say this: to the good Lord God.
You lost it.
Darn it.
Yeah, no, I've got it.
Genesis.
I got a piece of out. Would protect these people. Would protect these people. This is 2024. Maybe that's part of the problem. And do we have a record of him protecting his people? Do we have a record of him not protecting his people? We're talking about this
Whoa.
stuff over the dam here, a little bit.
War
Yeah.
fall into that category?
Yeah. Well,
World War I, World War II.
did he protect his people?
Did he protect his people then?
What do you call the Holocaust?
Yeah. Great example. Even a better example. Did
Yeah. There was
they
a
protect him? I would
couple
say
more
no.
of them. Yeah. Yeah, and so, they can argue about that, but they still are God's people within that thing, but they're not doing everything he said, and he's not doing everything he said,
Yeah.
or she,
Or she.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm not sure which. It's
I'm gonna go with she.
because of the English, because of the language and how it puts. But anyway, there's that kind of thing, and there's things like the story of the tree in Eden.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, if you touch that tree, you'll be dead. he touched the tree and he's not, he wasn't
And he's not dead. He didn't
Yeah.
die.
That was one of them. That was kind of an early one. Then it went on into, there were wars and things to try to recover the land that they, Canaan, for instance, that whole thing. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But I was just trying to point out that the great good Lord who has everything right doesn't
Doesn't have it, yeah.
Doesn't necessarily have it right all the
doesn't have it
time.
right. Yeah, he's still a great Lord, but he's no. Is this a good idea to talk about with AI?
On your next pod?
Do you feel like an AI? Do
No.
you feel like an AI?
No.
Do you feel? Oh, he disagrees.
There's a car alarm going off.
Anyway, are we done?
I think so, and I think next week we'll talk about what?
I'll find something, but it's
Section 4.
Section 4! Well, we
The
can talk
validity
about,
of the public debt of the United States.
Yeah.
well, we can talk about
Oh my God.
what
this is
happens on
fascinating.
Thursday. Yeah.
Well, they're going to start hearing arguments Thursday. They're going to start hearing arguments Thursday.
Yeah.
His lawyers are going to stand up there and say this is not an insurrection, and I didn't swear an oath, and I'm not an officer of the United States.
Yeah.
Some of his arguments are pretty wild.
You got that down pretty good there, Paul.
I tell you what,
Yeah. You gonna listen to it?
I will pay attention to it for sure,
I,
and I'll give you guys all the skinny if you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I learned.
They usually run that 2 or 3 times.
I'd rather keep my head in the sand.
They,
Pretend things are fine.
Yeah,
yeah.
because whatever the ruling is, well, especially if they rule against him, what are the other states going to do? And are they going to put a provision in the law that says, now this is federal law? That would take him off of every ballot in every state. Are they going to go that far?
Now he's our next president.
Anyway, it's
So-
a Constitution that's still alive and still being threshed out.
Yes, it is
right.
being severely tested.
Yeah. So
We are testing it.
We are testing.
We are testing it.
All right.
You know we all have law degrees.
We the people.
we don't need to go back to the feudal times in order to gain some ground with the Constitution.
Right.
Even though sometimes it feels futile.
Does feel good.
Feudal is
Yeah.
feudal.
Poodle. Awesome. All right. Well, hey, everybody. We'll see you back here next week. And God only knows what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
All right, later, gang.
Ciao.